You are not weak-minded. You are predictable. And that is exactly why social pressure works on you even when you can see it coming. Quick thing before we go deeper. We are building toward our next subscriber milestone, and your subscription genuinely helps us reach more people who actually want the real mechanics, not the usual slogans. And if this hits uncomfortably close, tap like so the algorithm stops burying it and starts showing it to the right people. Now let me frame what we are doing, because most people misunderstand the enemy. Social pressure is not just someone telling you what to do. It is your nervous system doing risk math in real time, using other humans as the data. You have felt this. You walk into a room and your personality gets edited. Not because you are fake, but because your brain is running an ancient survival program that says, if I miscalibrate here, I could lose access, reputation, protection, opportunity. And what makes it worse is that modern life hides the cost. You do not get kicked out of the tribe and starve. You just get subtle punishment, a look, a pause, being left out of a group chat, a joke that lands on you, a promotion that goes to someone else. Most people try to become confident to fix this. Confidence is not the lever. The lever is something much more surgical. You have to change what your brain is using as its reference signal, because social pressure is, at its core, a reference signal hijack. Here is what is actually happening in your head when you cave. Your brain is not deciding, I believe them. It is deciding, I cannot afford the uncertainty of being the odd one out. Now, that is a very different process. Think about this for a second. If you are in a group and everyone acts like something is normal, your brain gets a strong cue that the risk is lower if you comply, even if you privately think it is wrong. That is why social pressure is strongest when the situation is ambiguous, not when it is clear. The classic Asch conformity experiments get cited a lot, but people miss the real point. It is not that people are stupid and copy others. It is that when reality feels socially negotiable, your brain treats the group as an instrument panel. Now here is where it gets interesting. Social pressure has two channels, and most advice only targets one. Channel 1 is informational influence. They might know something I do not. Channel 2 is normative influence. If I do not align, I will be punished. The twist is that your brain often disguises Channel 2 as Channel 1 to protect your self-image. You tell yourself, maybe I am wrong, when the real fear is, maybe I will be alone. That self-deception is not a moral failure. It is a status protection feature. Let me show you what I mean with a concrete example. You are with friends and they start mocking someone. You do not join in, but you do not interrupt either. Later you tell yourself, it was not my place, or it was just a joke. That is informational language. But what your body felt in the moment was normative threat. If you object, you become the target. So your mind retrofits a rational explanation so you can keep believing you are independent. This is why people who think of themselves as strong-willed are sometimes the easiest to pressure. Their identity needs them to feel autonomous, so they produce better excuses. So if you want immunity, step 1 is brutal but freeing. Stop arguing with your excuses and start tracking your threat cues. Because social pressure is not primarily a thought problem, it is a threat detection problem. Here is a practical test you can run today. The moment you feel yourself about to comply, ask one question. What punishment am I predicting? Not what do they want, not what is right. What punishment am I predicting? Is it rejection, mockery, losing access, becoming inconvenient? The instant you name the predicted punishment, you move the experience from a fog into an object, and objects can be handled. But I promised you new insights, so let us go one layer deeper. The second mechanism almost nobody talks about is that social pressure is amplified by what I call synchrony debt. Humans are built to sync. Voice rhythm, facial microexpressions, posture, even breathing. When you walk into a group, you automatically start paying synchrony. You match pace, you laugh at the right time, you soften your edges. That is not people-pleasing. That is the entry fee for being perceived as safe. Now watch the pattern. The more synchrony debt you have already paid, the harder it becomes to disagree. Because disagreement is not just a different opinion, it is a break in synchrony. It is a little social error signal that says, I am not fully with you. And your brain predicts that error signal will cost you. This is why you can be incredibly rational alone and suddenly become vague in groups. Alone, there is no synchrony debt. In groups, you are constantly managing microconnection. And when someone applies pressure, you are not just deciding about the topic. You are deciding whether to rupture the connection you have been maintaining. Here is the counterintuitive move. If you want to resist social pressure, you have to get comfortable with tiny ruptures on purpose. Not dramatic confrontations, tiny controlled desynchronizations. Saying, I see it differently, and letting there be 2 seconds of silence, not rushing to repair it. That silence is where most people fold. They treat it like danger. But it is not danger. It is just the nervous system complaining that it cannot predict the room. This is also why just be yourself is useless advice. The skill is not self-expression, the skill is rupture tolerance. Now let us make this even more concrete. Next time you feel pressure, do not jump to a big statement. Use what negotiators call a low-commitment divergence. Something like, that is one way to see it, or I am not sure I agree yet, or I would need more to be convinced. Notice what that does. You are not attacking anyone. You are not posturing. You are simply refusing instant synchrony. You are teaching your brain, through experience, that a small rupture does not equal exile. Stay with me, because the next part recontextualizes everything. Social pressure is not only external. The most effective social pressure comes from the version of the group you carry inside your head. You do not respond to people. You respond to your internal prediction of them. That prediction is built from past reinforcement. Who laughed when you spoke up? Who withdrew? Who rewarded compliance? Over time, your brain builds what psychologists sometimes call internal working models, but I want you to picture it like this. You have an internal audience, and that audience is not neutral. It is a tribunal trained by your history. This is why you can feel social pressure even when you are alone, writing an email, choosing clothes, deciding what to post, deciding what not to say. You are simulating punishment. That simulation is the pressure. So immunity is not just not caring what others think. That phrase is nonsense. Because caring is how humans navigate. Immunity is choosing which audience gets to grade you. Here is a diagnostic that cuts through a lot of confusion. Ask yourself, whose approval would make me betray my own judgment fastest? Do not pick the person you admire. Pick the person whose disapproval makes you contort. That is your leverage point. That is the internal audience member with veto power over your behavior. Now here is the uncomfortable truth. If someone has veto power over you, you are in a hidden contract with them. The contract is, I will trade self-respect for belonging, and the reason it is hidden is because admitting it would hurt your identity. But once you can see the contract, you can renegotiate it. How do you renegotiate a hidden contract? You need an alternative currency, because right now, the currency you pay with is compliance, so you need a different way to feel safe. This is where most people go wrong. They try to be strong in the moment of pressure. That is like trying to do surgery during an earthquake. The work happens before the moment. You build what I call a private standard, and you make it measurable. Let me explain. Social pressure wins when your standards are social and vague. Be liked. Do not be awkward. Do not be difficult. Those standards are impossible because you cannot directly control them. And because you cannot control them, your brain becomes hyper-vigilant and ready to comply. A private standard is different. It is internal and it is specific. For example, I do not say things I do not believe. Or, I ask one clarifying question before agreeing. Or, if I feel rushed, I delay my answer. These are behaviors you can control under stress. Now we are at the midpoint, and I want to flip the whole story. Becoming immune to social pressure is not about becoming harder. It is about becoming slower. Pressure is a speed tactic. The group wants immediate alignment because speed prevents you from consulting your private standard. Speed forces you to use the group as your reference signal, so the most powerful anti-pressure move is not a counter-argument. It is a time move. You can literally say, "Let me think about it," and if you can tolerate the discomfort, you win. Not morally, mechanically. You win because you break the timing that social influence depends on. If the group is counting on your immediate laugh, your immediate nod, your immediate yes, delaying is like cutting the wire. But you might be thinking, okay, and delay works for decisions. What about the subtle stuff, like laughing at jokes you hate, or agreeing with values you do not share, or nodding along in meetings? That is where the deepest layer is. The deepest layer is that social pressure is a coordination game. In game theory terms, the group is trying to maintain a shared reality so everyone can predict everyone else. Your disagreement is not just different, it introduces uncertainty into the coordination game. People dislike that uncertainty, so they punish you, often unconsciously, to restore predictability. Notice the pattern here. Groups do not punish wrongness as much as they punish unpredictability. You can be wrong, but confident, and people will often tolerate it. You can be right, but socially disruptive, and people will attack you. That is a terrifying fact until you realize it gives you a blueprint. If the group punishes unpredictability, then your path to immunity is to become predictably principled, not sporadically rebellious, not random, predictable. This is the part that separates real immunity from performative independence. Performative independence is reactive. You resist when you feel controlled. Predictable principle is proactive. People know what you do before the moment arrives. For example, if you are the person who always says, "I need a night to think before I commit," then it stops being an insult. It becomes your known operating system. If you are the person who always asks, "What are we optimizing for here?" In meetings, it stops being defiance. It becomes your role. You are no longer breaking coordination. You are providing a stable alternative coordination point. And this is why the best way to become immune is to build an identity that is useful to others while still being non-compliant. Useful, but non-compliant. That sounds paradoxical, but it is the secret. Here is the model, and I want you to actually remember it because it is simple enough to use under stress. There are 3 positions you can occupy in a group: sync, sabotage, or anchor. Sync is pure conformity. You match, you merge, you disappear. Sabotage is what people do when they try to be immune by being contrarian. They break things, they mock, they reject everything, they make themselves untrustworthy. Anchor is the rare position. An anchor stays connected without surrendering reference. You maintain warmth, you maintain respect, but your reality does not move just because theirs does. How do you become an anchor? 3 steps. First, you build private standards that are behavioral, not emotional. Not "I will feel confident," but "I will delay. I will ask. I will state my uncertainty honestly." Second, you practice micro ruptures weekly, on purpose, in low stakes settings. You return the wrong order politely. You say, "Actually, I asked for no onions." You tell a friend, "I cannot tonight," without a long excuse. You are training rupture tolerance like a muscle. Most people wait for a high stakes moral moment. That is backwards. You train on small weight. Third, you make yourself predictable. You tell people your operating system before the pressure arrives. I do not make decisions on the spot. I do not gossip about people who are not here. If I disagree, I will say it directly and respectfully. When you do that, you are not fighting social pressure in the moment. You are changing the social environment that generates it. Now, one more layer that makes this feel almost unfair. Social pressure is stronger when your status is dependent and unclear. If your role in the group is unstable, you will conform more. If your role is stable, you can deviate more. This is why new employees laugh at unfunny jokes. This is why people early in a friend group copy the vibe. Your brain is trying to secure a position. So the real long-term play is to build what I call portable status. Status that does not live in one room. Skills, relationships, across different circles, financial margin, competence that travels. The more portable your status, the less any single group can threaten you, which means your nervous system stops treating every disagreement like a survival event. And notice what this does. It converts social pressure from a threat into information. When you are not desperate for belonging, you can finally read the room clearly. You can see who pressures you, how they do it, and what they are protecting. Because pressure is often a confession. People pressure you hardest around the beliefs that keep their identity intact. So here is the ultimate insight, the pattern behind the patterns. Immunity to social pressure is not the absence of influence. It is sovereignty over your reference signal. When the group is your reference signal, you will drift. When your private standard is your reference signal, you can stand in the same room, feel the same pressure, and still choose. And if you want one sentence you can use as a mental switch in real time, it is this: I can belong without agreeing. Say it internally, and then prove it with a small behavior. Delay. Ask. Name the predicted punishment. Accept the silence. Make the rupture, and do not over-repair it. If this lands, I want you to try a challenge this week. In one low-stakes moment, create a tiny, respectful divergence and hold steady for 5 seconds longer than you want to. Then watch what happens. Not just in the room, in your body. Because the final truth is simple and sharp. Social pressure does not control you through force. It controls you through your inability to tolerate the feeling of being misaligned. Fix that, and the room does not get to edit you anymore.